Well, welcome everybody. This week's lesson will be our second set in studying the book of Ruth and learning about the idea of redemption. And redemption is central and key to the book of Ruth. And if you haven't seen the first episode, that's really the introduction to the book of Ruth. And that you can find on the YouTube channel. And just the synopsis is that a man named Elimelech, whose name means my God is king, he takes his family, including a lady named Naomi, whose name means sweet delight, and they leave Bethlehem and go to the nation of Moab because they're having a famine, right? God's blessing has been withdrawn from Israel because they've turned their back on God, and so there's a famine in the land, and Elimelech takes his family there with his two sons as well. While they're in Moab, Elimelech dies. The two sons take wives that are Moabites, one named Orpah and one named Ruth. And eventually, after being there for 10 years, both the sons die as well, leaving Naomi with Ruth and Orpah. Now, Naomi has decided that she's going to return to Bethlehem because she hears that the Lord's blessing has come back upon the land and that there's food, right? It's at the end of verse 7 where he says, at the end of verse 6, when she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to aid his people by providing food for them. Right? And we talked about this cycle that happens of where Israel is disobedient to God. They turn his back on him. And so God takes the blessing away, and instead there's curses upon the land. The people eventually cry out to God and return to him, or repent and turn back to him, and then God delivers them once again. So we can see that the beginning, they are in a cycle of turning away from God, and this a curse that it comes upon them through God's justice. And now we can see that the people have cried out and God has provided for them. So that leads us into our next part, which is Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 through 22, which brings us to the end of the first chapter. And I'll read and stop, and we'll go through pieces of it at a time. It says, Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." Right, so at first we see that Naomi is going to go back, and it seems like they've left. And somewhere after they've left Moab, Naomi realizes that, wait a second, my daughter-in-laws aren't going to be welcome here. Right? They're Moabites. And we're going back to Israel. And so she realizes that she's going to be alone. Right? She's lost her husband. She's lost her sons. And now it seems as though she's going to need to give up her daughters-in-law. So she turns to them and says, "Hey, go back. Like, there's nothing for you where I'm going. Right? You should go back to your own people, go back to your mothers. They'll find you new husbands. You'll have children. You'll have safety. You'll have security." Because in this time in history, if you're a woman on your own, you're not safe. You're not secure. You're subject to a lot of brutal things that may or may not come upon you. So she wants them to go back, and right away Orpah, remember her name was Drip or Droop, kind of almost seems like she's the sad one of the group, right? And Ruth, whose name means friend or companion, right? They both say, "Hey, we'll go back. We're going to go with you. You're our mother-in-law. You've been good to us, right? We most likely know that Sweet Delight has taken good care of them, has loved them as her own daughters." They said, "Nope, we're going to go with you to your people." And it's at this time that Naomi kind of starts sounding more bitter, right? She starts sounding like she's upset with God, but first she gives them one of God's laws, right? She starts talking about, hey, I'm not going to have another husband. I'm too old. And besides the fact, I'm not going to have any more kids. In fact, if I got pregnant tonight, would you actually wait for my sons to grow up? And you might think, well, why would that be? Well, God had a law, right? And Naomi's basically declaring that law. And I just want to read it to you from Deuteronomy 25:5-6. It says, if brothers are living together and one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brother shall take her and marry her and fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to her. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. Right? Naomi seems to be held to this, that, I don't have any other sons that you can marry, right? To carry on the names of my sons. And so there's nothing here for you. There's nothing for me to offer you in the nation of Israel. Right? In fact, she says that the Lord's hand has gone out from me. Right? She is basically declaring that the Lord has left her. I sometimes wonder if she didn't think maybe this is punishment for leaving Israel in the first place and fleeing and going to Moab. Right? I don't know, but either way, Naomi feels very staunchly that the Lord has left her. That she's got nothing left. And so she's just going to go home and be bitter and wither and die. Over time, of course. And so she says, go back, go back, go back. Right? And there's a lot of tears and there's a lot of crying. Right, guys, we wouldn't get this part, guys. You got to separate. You go, sorry, man. Man, I'm really going to miss you. Take it easy. And then I'm going to leave and I'm going to cry by myself. But the ladies, they're a little different in that regard, right? They're going to let their emotions come through. And so we see that in this part. And so when Naomi says, hey, go ahead, leave. There's no sons I'm going to be able to give you to marry you. And your Moabites. There's nothing for you where I'm going. And this is the reply. At this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Right? Orpah, just by her name, right? She's going to succumb to it. She's going to go with it. And she turns and she leaves. And she leaves Naomi, but Ruth clings to her. And the Hebrew word there for clung is called dabak, which means to actually join or to stick to. Right? She's going to cling to her. She's going to stick to her. She's going to put all of her eggs in that basket, and she's going to stay with Naomi. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. As a little side of front, this is how our lives actually play out quite a bit, even though we don't see it that way. Right? When bad things start to happen and the enemy starts wanting us to push away from God, we have a choice. We can either choose to turn and go back to where we came, or we can choose to cling to God. That's a choice we each and every one of us get to make. Right? When we become Christians, when we be born again, when we be saved, there are going to be rough things that are going to happen in our lives. Some of them seem unbearable at the moment. And it's at those crossroads that we can determine to go back. I've heard about people who have gone into drug abuse, or they've been addicted to alcohol or drugs, or all kinds of different things in their lives. And when they're delivered from those things, all of a sudden, maybe something bad happened. Maybe they lose a loved one. Maybe they lose a job that they cared about and loved a lot. And any number of things can happen in life, and they fall back into their alcoholism, or they fall back into the drugs. And they blame it on God. Or they have this choice that Ruth makes to cling to be stuck to be joined to. And I'll tell you, brothers and sisters, that is the most liberating choice we can ever make in our lives, is to say, God, no matter what, wherever you go, I'm with you. Wherever you lead me, I will follow. Whatever you want me to be, I will be. You will be my God. I will trust you and I will follow you no matter what. That is the most liberating feeling you can have, to give control to Him. And that's what Ruth is doing here, right? She's making her pledge to Naomi, but she's also taking a vow before God. Right? Did you notice that in the text as I read it? Right? She says, your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. I'll die where you die, and I'll live where you live. I'll be buried there. And may God deal with me ever so severely if anything separates me from you except for death. Ruth is giving herself completely to God. She's trusting that as a Moabite, leaving Moab with an Israelite, that she's going to be able to go back and be accepted and have a fruitful life. It's a lot of trust, right? Remember, the Israelites and the Moabites, they don't like each other. In fact, it's a little more than don't like. They hate each other. That's something we all need to consider in life as we're moving forward. Right? When the rubber hits the road, which direction are you going to go? Are you going to turn and walk away from God and blame Him for the problems that come up? Or are you going to cling to Him and say, Lord, I know you're going to take care of me. I know right now is a rough patch. But I know that you're faithful, and I know that you are true, and I know that things are going to get better. All right, so we get done with that, and so Naomi decides, hey, I'm going to stop harassing her. She can come with me. Right? She can come, no problem. We're going to bring her with us. So the two women, this is starting in verse 19, so the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, can this be Naomi? Now the idea here is that when they show up, this isn't a, oh great, it's Naomi. They're like, can this be Naomi? Right? She left. She's alone. Right? They're not necessarily welcoming her back into the community. They're seeing her and they're asking, can this be her? Why is she back? Right? She abandoned this place. She went into Moab with her husband. Right? There's almost this modicum of judgment about it. Of, well, look at us. Hey, we cried out to God. He brought us food again, and you guys abandoned God. Oh, there's Naomi. Look at her. Oh, she's all alone. She's got a Moabite girl with her. Right? They're not welcoming her with open arms. And they ask, can this be Naomi? Naomi says, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Right now we can see the full scope of Naomi's anger in her heart towards the Lord. She doesn't want to be called Sweet Delight anymore. She wants to be called Mara. Mara in Hebrew means bitter. Right? She's taken on a whole new persona. She's gone from what most likely is somebody who's sweet and kind and loving in nature, right? Ruth's not going to go with her if she mistreated her. And she's gone from that to bitter. And notice the verbiage, right? I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. She definitely didn't leave physically full, right? Remember, there was a famine on the land. They had to flee. She had her 2 sons. She had her husband, and that's what made her full. Right? Oftentimes we consider what we have on whether we're full and rich as opposed to what we don't have. See, when Naomi lost everything, meaning her husband and her sons, she was empty. She had nothing. In one regard, when they left, they were trusting in God. Right? The famine was on the land, and man, times were tough, and we're picking up our home, and we're leaving our family, and we're leaving our friends, and we're leaving our place, our home, and we're going into a foreign territory where they don't even like Israelites, but it says she felt full. Why? Because at that time she was trusting in God. Now she doesn't trust God anymore. Remember? His hand is against me. And so her heart is full of bitterness instead of trust. And so she doesn't want to be called Naomi anymore. In fact, she takes it a little bit more, a little further, right? She says, the Lord has afflicted me, right? That he's afflicted me. And the word afflicted here is aha, which means to speak or to testify. Right? You might go, man, those 2 things don't go together, right? The translation I'm reading from, they translate it as afflicted, but the word that we have down as misfortune is ra'ah, which means good for nothing or bad, right? She's saying that because of the circumstance that she finds herself in, that God has testified that she's good for nothing, that she's bad. It gives a little bit more spin on it, doesn't it? Naomi says, call me Mara because the Lord has testified that I'm good for nothing. This shows us the depths of how crushed Naomi is. Right? Her spirit's been destroyed within her. And she's not seeing the future. She's just seeing what's going on right now and going, the Lord has testified that I'm no good. And now I'm back. In fact, you'd be better off just not even being around me. Right? That makes it look a whole lot different, doesn't it? When we see it that way. The final verse in this chapter is key. And it's going to lead us into our next level of discussion before we get into chapter 2. It says, saying, Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Right throughout the book, the author reminds us that Ruth is not an Israelite. Right? She's a pagan for all essential terms, right? She's not from Israel. In fact, as a Moabitess, she would have had other gods, right? There would have been idols and different things that they did. They did not look to the Most High God. They would have had idols, and they would have had sacrifices, and they would have had different things. They definitely weren't looking at a monotheistic God in their lives. And so the author reminds us this over and over. Hey, Ruth isn't from there. She's different. But she's seen something. And so she's willing to turn her back on the gods that she grew up with, and the things that she put her faith in, and she's willing to put them in the Most High God. And it says that they returned to Bethlehem during the barley harvest. A couple things you need to know about barley harvest to understand where they're leading us. So the barley harvest happens in the spring in Israel, right? It's somewhere in that April-May time frame. To where we live, right, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but we're in a totally different part of the world. But the barley harvest is in April/May time area. What else goes on at that time? Right, that's right around Passover time. It was when the barley harvest comes in. And the barley harvest is associated with first fruits. Right, the first fruits of your crop being brought to the Lord. It's also associated with a time of redemption, because the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt during this time. Right? The author's letting us know that a time of redemption is near. A time of redemption is upon them. And so next week, we're going to talk about, what does redemption mean? Right? We all have an idea in our head of what it means, but I think each and every one of us, even though we have an idea, I think we've missed the mark on this one. There's more to it than what we actually imagine, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing that God has done for each and every one of us. So I thank you for your time this week. I hope and I pray that you're intrigued by where the story of Ruth is going. I know I'm taking time to lay out all these facets of it, but it's important to understanding the Bible. So I invite you to come back next week, where we're going to explore, what does redemption mean in the Bible. So I thank you all for being with me. God bless you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.